Alright, what's going on, everybody? This is Z Street 3 here, back to a brand new video. More college football for week 7. I gotta tell you guys, this is one of the best weeks all year. A lot of close games, a lot of big time matchups, some crazy upsets, and depending on who you're a fan of, a lot of heartbreak. Let's go ahead and get it started with a game on Friday, October 10th. South Florida versus the, as you can see, previously undefeated North Texas. Now, North Texas has a really cool quarterback right here. West Maker. This is the guy who started with 0 offers. In fact, he was working a 9 to 5 before he became a walk-on, I believe, at North Texas, and was a 3rd string or 4th string quarterback who suddenly saw himself propelled to the starting position for North Texas after some injuries, and has led them to a 5-0 start, and had not thrown a single interception till, I don't know if he threw interception in this game or not. But he's also playing South Florida, who is a very, very good team, who, as we can see, is ranked 24 in the nation. Now, if we go here, we see that they beat Florida at Boise State. They beat Florida, got their butts whipped by Miami, but they beat at Florida, by the way, at the Swamp, beat them. Looking at that now, it's not that big of a win. But they look like they're one of the best non-Power 5 teams that will nab that one playoff spot. And this was a huge game implication-wise because North Texas also looked like one of the best non-Power 5 teams, and they just beat them 63 to 36. So a very high-scoring game. I mean, 36 is a lot of points in a football game. Like, if you're scoring 36, you think you're in good position. But they gave up 63. So South Florida is definitely a team to be afraid of. Moving on, we got Illinois, number 17 in the nation, versus number Ohio State. Now, as you all know, last week, Illinois lost to Indiana by like 63 to 10. They're going up against Ohio State, arguably a better team. Now, they had a much better game today. However, as I suspected, they had no shot in beating Ohio State, who won 34 to 16. Indiana. Now, this was the big upset of the day. Indiana going into Eugene, Oregon. Oregon, one of the best teams in the nation. In my opinion, I thought that Dante Moore was the best quarterback in the nation. The way we saw him handle himself with poise at Whiteout Penn State. This game was a back and forth game. As you can see at halftime, Indiana had a 13 to 10 lead. Both offenses were struggling. Both defenses were playing very, very well. The way I saw it is that Oregon was getting together some good drives, but then Indiana having some big 3rd down and 4th down stops in their half of the field. So the defense played tremendous and stopped Oregon's onslaught of offense and slowed them down and limited their big breakaway plays. And then in the end, and back-to-back throws on Oregon's last 2 possessions, Dante Moore throws 2 interceptions. He had the first possession, the first play was a penalty. Next play, interception. Indiana goes down and extends their lead. And then he throws an interception the very next play, the first play of that very last possession. Indiana nails it and beats Oregon at home and proves to the nation that, yeah, they were good last year, but they got smacked by Ohio State. This year, they're the real deal, and they are a national title contender. And they are undefeated. This is the first time in Indiana's program history that they have beaten a top 10 team, I believe, or a top 10 team on the road. Ever. This will also be, as we will see later, will be the highest ranking. Let's continue on. Ole Miss was down against Washington State, a team who was not good at one point. They crawled their way back. Had a lot of trouble in the red zone. But they end up winning at home 24-21. So a scary game. This is one of those teams that you need as a big-time team. You need those games where you struggle against lesser teams, but you find a way to win and come together. That's what makes championship teams. And this might be a really key, while tough, but test for Ole Miss in the future. Florida and A&M. This game was pretty close for most of the way until that 4th quarter, when Texas A&M took it away from them and wasn't close anymore. You saw in that second half, Florida only scored 3 points, so A&M's defense played a lot better in that second half. and A&M pulls away 34-17 to remain undefeated. And this was the big game, my personal favorite that I watched. Texas silences all doubt and beats Oklahoma. John Mateer, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Now he did return from arm surgery, and we even saw him bleeding. He did not have a good game. He was throwing into pressure. I mean, 20 out of 38, 202 yards is not bad, but 3 interceptions is very costly. He had, I believe, 1 or 2 were drops as well by his receivers. But Texas, at the half, it was a defensive battle, as I predicted it to be. 6-3 lead for Oklahoma. And that second half, it was all Texas. Texas played its best football all year long. In that second half, the defense of Texas was absolutely dominant. Oklahoma could do nothing against them. And then Ryan Niblett gets a 60-yard punt return touchdown. Wisner, coming back off injury, even had to come out a little bit in this game at 22 carries for 98 yards. Good look at Arch Manning. Had himself a game. His best game all year, not even close. 21 out of 27. There was one point where Texas was like 6 for 6 on third downs. He had 166 yards and 1 touchdown, including 34 yards on the run. If we look at the defense, we thought that Oklahoma would get a lot of sacks because they have a great defensive line, and Texas' offensive line was horrible. They had 1 sack. Texas had 5, including 2.5 to Colin Simmons, their star player. So the script that we thought we were going to see completely flips in Texas' favor, and this is a key win. Gives them their mojo back, gives them their swag back, gives Arch Manning some confidence. Beating their rival, this could be the big game that could be the swing in their favor. Instead of being 0-2 in the SEC, they are now 1-1, and they're still in control of their destiny with only 2 losses. They got to win out, but they are definitely in control of their own destiny, and they got all the mojo and confidence going forward that they are a good team. So I'm excited to see if they can carry it forward. Alabama and Missouri, this was an amazing game, arguably the game of the day, besides maybe Oregon and Indiana. This game was in the back and forth game. Alabama pulls away late, kind of, but Missouri is crawling back, and now they've got a chance. And the star quarterback, whatever his name is, throws a horrible interception. He had 3 open dudes on that last play that he could have gotten it to. He misses all 3 interceptions. Alabama seals the win. Now, as we know, Missouri has the #1 rusher in the nation, in this Hardy guy. He had only 52 yards. Bear proved the quarterback had 61 yards with an average of 5.5. 167 yards, but 2 interceptions, very costly. Ty Simpson had himself the game. With game on the line, Ty Simpson puts together an absolute dart. It was a 3rd and 22. On that 3rd down, they make it more manageable. On that 4th down, they go for it, and he gives an absolute dot to his receiver. Ty Simpson pretty much put the team on his back this game, in my opinion. He really did. And Alabama comes away with the win. Missouri, licking their wounds, thus suffers their first defeat all year long. Kansas and Texas Tech, as no surprise, Texas Tech took an early 18-0 lead and ran away with it 42-17, despite 222 yards from Jane Daniels and only missing 3 passes. Now, Texas Tech is the #1 offense in the nation and normally airs it out with 2 great quarterbacks. As you can see here, both quarterbacks played. Morton had 91 yards, Mohamed had 42. However, it was the run game. Look at this, 21 carries, 263 yards. It's an average of 12 per carry. That 71-yard touchdown was his longest. They're normally an air raid team. Again, the best offense in the nation now has a breakaway game on the run. Could anyone stop Texas Tech in the Big 12? I don't know. Georgia and Auburn. It's a very controversial game. Some 2 very, very bad calls. A timeout that Georgia should not have gotten, which would have been a penalty, which would have made it 3rd and long, as well as a touchdown call reversed from Auburn, saying it was a fumble. Now, hey, at the end of the game, you still got to win the game. But a lot of Auburn fans are upset. But Georgia, again, barely sneaks away with a win against a team who's really not that good. Auburn's 0-3 in the SEC. Now, they played a lot of good teams, but I don't think Auburn's a very, very good team, to be real with you. I think Jackson Arnold is kind of a hookie. So Georgia, struggling. And I think that Georgia's not a good team this year. I really think that they're going to not be in the top bracket of SEC teams this year. They got a tough matchup. They can prove me wrong next week, but I don't think they're going to be very good this year. South Carolina, their woes continue versus LSU. Low-scoring game here, 20-10. But LSU takes care of it at home. South Carolina, after being ranked in the top 10, is now 500 and 1-3 in the SEC. Meanwhile, LSU picks up a big-time SEC win with one loss. Tennessee versus Arkansas. None of those games is very, very close. As you can see here, Tennessee is pulling away. It was tied at the half, 17-17. Arkansas has a great, great offense, but a horrible defense. It was tied at the half, and all of a sudden, Tennessee is pulling away late. I believe they scored 17 unanswered points, and Arkansas had a flurry of 14 points, but lose by 3 points. So the comeback is almost successful, but just not enough. Too little time. And Tennessee survives Arkansas 34-31, and Arkansas falls 2-4 and 0-2 in the SEC. It was heartbreak after heartbreak for Razorback fans. Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. This game was not anywhere close. Took a 15-0 lead in the first quarter and ran away with it, 35-20. Georgia Tech is undefeated and looking very, very scary. As predicted, Michigan gets upset and wasn't even close by USC. A walk-on running back, Miller, has 158 yards and 1 touchdown and 18 carries. A freshman walk-on. Congratulations, my friend. You had yourself a game, and you are now on the map. Meanwhile, for Michigan, only 109 yards. Justin Hayes only 51 yards. Bryce Underwood, not too bad of a game. But Jaden Mavia had himself a stellar game. And USC proves that they deserve to be in the top 25, and they are a threat in the Big Ten. Meanwhile, Michigan drops its second game of the year. And they're essentially what this is a fraud alert for Michigan, which is not surprising to anyone probably. NC State versus Notre Dame. Both thought this might be an upset game. It turns out to be a blowout. 36-7 for Notre Dame. Quarterback for Notre Dame, Carr, has 342 yards. Jordan Love has 86 yards. Another great game. This was an awesome game. BYU versus Arizona. So in the first quarter, BYU's up 14-0. And then here comes Arizona. And they score 24 unanswered points. And they're up 24-14. And then in that fourth quarter, BYU comes storming back at the end. 10 points. We go into second overtime. And BYU gets a touchdown and then gets a defensive stop. Second overtime. Look at the stats here. Pretty cool stats. It was a really great game to watch late. Back and forth. Barry Bachmeier, the freshman who transferred from Stanford, has propelled BYU to new heights. 172 yards, 2 interceptions, so he was very struggling. However, he had 89 yards on the day with 22 carries as a quarterback. Martin had 25 for 162 yards. Noah Fifta had 219 yards. But 20 incompletions is not very good. And that's not very good either, but So a heartbreaking loss for Arizona. And BYU comes back. Had the lead, lost it, then came back to continue to be undefeated. The Big 12 is looking like it's going to be BYU versus Texas Tech. But here comes Utah. The loss of Sam Leavitt this game. Arizona State, formerly also I believe in the top 10, has dropped some games. And they get smacked by Utah 42-10. And Utah proves that they are a Big 12 contender. I believe Utah is being led by no, it's a different team. But Utah puts Big 12 on notice that they're here. Iowa State dropped another game after being ranked in the top 15. They lose on the away game to Colorado, who gets a big-time win for Colorado. Huge win for them. Finally have themselves a good game, a top 25 win. Pittsburgh, Florida State, after being 3-0 in the top 10, beating Bama in the week 1, has lost 3 games in a row and falls to 0-3 in the ACC. They lose 34-31, and they're probably out of the top 25. Speaking of that, before we get to the top 25, let's go ahead and go to the season stat leaders. Still pretty much no movement right here. Rushing-wise, Hardy loses his top spot to Cam Cook. Michigan Hayes, guys, is dropping. Receiving-wise, we got Mario Craver and Mark Lemon. The only two dudes, well, I guess Hank Beatty. The only two dudes from top 25 teams are right here now. Oh, by the way, for Texas, interception-wise, two of those interceptions came from Malik Muhammad. So we've been waiting all year for him to have himself a game, and he did. I told you guys in the beginning, I thought that Texas had one of the best defenses in the nation. They proved that this week. Because in the previous ones, like, offense has been so bad that they've had to be in the field for so long, and they get tired and they lose the mojo. And it's hard to keep positive vibes when your offense can't score. There's no momentum, and that does play into effect with the whole team. Well, the quarterback is the most important position in the game because he is the guy that leads a team. He gets a team hype. Now, let's go ahead and go into the rankings and see what we got cooking. A lot of changes here. Big time changes. Ohio State and Miami stay the same. Indiana, for the first time in school history, is in the top 3, and they move up 4 spots. A&M jumps Ole Miss to number 4. Ole Miss drops 1 after they struggled to 5. Alabama is up 2 after their impressive win at Missouri to 6. Texas Tech, first time in the top 10 in a very, very long time. They're at number 7. Oregon, after their loss, drops 5 spots to still remain in the top 10 at number 8. Georgia moves up 1 despite their struggles. LSU also moves up 1 to get back in the top 10. Tennessee just outside at 11. Georgia Tech now at 12. Notre Dame jumps 3 and is climbing back up after being in the top 10 in the beginning of the season to number 13. Then we've got Oklahoma, who drops 8 spots from number 6 to 14, still in the top 25. Still in the top 15. BYU now in the top 15, as rightly deserved. They move up 3, undefeated. Missouri drops 2 spots only after an impressive fought against Alabama. They really could have. They had a chance to win, but they just didn't pull it away. At number 16, Vanderbilt, still in the top 25, number 17. They move up 3 spots. Virginia is at 18. They move up 1. South Florida now in the top 20 at number 19. They move up 5 spots. The Trojans of USC, previously not ranked, go up to 20. Texas is right behind them, who again were the preseason number 1 team in the nation. They were the fastest team ever to be from number 1 to go unranked. They are now back in the top 25 at 21 after their impressive smackdown of Oklahoma. Memphis, 22, undefeated. Utah, previously not ranked, now at 23. Cincinnati, also previously not ranked, now at 24. And Nebraska, the first time this year, is in the top 25 at 5-1. Following from the rankings, of course, is Michigan from 15 all the way out. Illinois, 17 out. Arizona State, 21 out. Iowa State, 22 out. And Florida State at 25 out. Now, as you know, Penn State was number 2 in the nation. They also lost at home. Northwestern and James Franklin has been officially fired. Drew Aller is also out for the rest of the year. So an utter disaster class for Penn State, and their season is pretty much over. And they might not even be a bowl-worthy team as we get into the end of it. So, I don't know how it could get worse, to be honest with you, for Penn State. Go to week 8, see what we got cooking for next week. Louisville and Miami are going to be a test for Miami. They're going to be at home, but Louisville is not a team to discount. I think Miami will handle business here, though, and prove that they are a top team in the nation. Miami, again, Carson Beck. People thought that Miami was going to be a really bad team this year. They are proving otherwise in extreme fashion. Carson Beck is chasing glory in Miami. Nebraska versus Minnesota. Their first game in the top 25. How do they respond to that pressure? Dylan Raiola, a former number 1 recruit, is going to go to Georgia. He's gone to Nebraska. It's really not paid out too well for him so far, but we'll see if he can lead Nebraska to get some potential upsets in the Big Ten. And maybe a final ranking at the end of the year, which Nebraska has not had for a very, very long time. Top 25 matchup in the SEC, Louisville and Vanderbilt. Now, this is going to be in Vandy, but I think Garrett Nussmeier is supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks in the nation, has struggled this year. 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions for under 1,500 yards so far. Meanwhile, Dago Pavia is having a pretty darn good year. It's going to be a back and forth game. You never know. Does Garrett Nussmeier finally wake up and have a good game, or does Vanderbilt pull off the upset? Georgia Tech versus Duke. Duke undefeated in the ACC. They'll be at home. Manziah is has one of the highest yardage in the entirety of college football. So not to be put lightly, but I think Georgia Tech will handle business here. Oklahoma needs to come back strong after that loss to Texas this past week against South Carolina, who's a team really in desperate need for a big-time win. They're going to be at home. Can they get it done and give Oklahoma its second loss in a row? Or will Oklahoma right the ship? After their upset loss against their biggest rival, they might be angry, and they might take it out on South Carolina. That's what I expect will happen. They might even sit John Mateer. He might not be ready to come back. But I think Oklahoma will right the ship and will be very angry and smack down South Carolina. They're favored by 5 points. By the way, Vandy here is favored by 2.5 points. Don't see that very often, by the way. Michigan State versus Indiana. They got their ass smacked by UCLA. After firing their coach, now has won 2 games and has scored 63 points in the last 2 games. That whole time, maybe their old coach was horrible, but they are on the move up. Michigan State is not a good team. They're playing Indiana. In Indiana, they will probably get blown out right here. Texas A&M versus Arkansas. This has become a heated rivalry between these 2 teams. Normally used to be played at AT&T Stadium. Now is played home and home games, which I think is unfortunate. It should be played at AT&T Stadium. That would be really cool. A&M will travel to Razorback Stadium, who, as we know, going to Razorback Stadium is not really a away game because they just suck that bad. A&M should handle business here. Or, in Arkansas, get a big upset to at least put some good mojo on the year. We'll see. Ole Miss and Georgia. This is probably the game of the week right here. A top 10 matchup. Can Georgia prove that they are still a good team? They're at home. Or can Ole Miss continue their undefeated streak and prove that they are contending for the SEC and NF championship? I personally want Ole Miss to win this game. I really, really do. But that's just me. UGA is favored by 5 points, despite being ranked lower. But I personally am going to be rooting for Ole Miss for sure. Texas Tech versus Arizona State. Arizona State looking for a big win here. They don't want to fall 2-2 in the Big 12. It's a lot of pressure in the Big 12. A lot of good teams. You don't want to lose 2 games. Texas Tech, meanwhile, undefeated. They're headed to Arizona State, but I think they handle business here. Texas Tech might finish the year undefeated. They just might. Memphis, also undefeated, playing UAB. Should be a blowout victory. Not much to say. Oregon versus Rutgers. Rutgers is 0-3 in the Big 10. Always a really bad program. Oregon just lost to Indiana. Similar to Oklahoma, they're going to want some revenge, and they're going to be angry, and they're going to smack Rutgers. Washington State versus Virginia. Washington State, as we know, narrowly lost to Ole Miss at home, a top 25 team, facing Virginia. Can they, this time, finally pull away with an upset victory? Texas versus Kentucky. Kentucky is 0-3 in the SEC. This will be in Kentucky. Kentucky is one of those teams where they can play anybody close, but they normally never win. Texas, can they continue that mojo? Is Arch Manning finally here? Has he finally arrived? I think Texas will handle business here. They're favored by 12.5 points. Tennessee and Alabama, another top 25 matchup. Those 2 teams have been at each other's throats the past couple of years. In Alabama. Alabama is looking a lot better than they did after they lost to Florida State. And Tennessee has struggled as of late against lower tier teams. And they're going into Alabama, a very hard place to play. This is a toss-up. Alabama's favored by just over a touchdown. USC versus Notre Dame. This is a key win for Notre Dame. If Notre Dame loses this game, they are out of the college football playoff race. If USC wins this game, then they put the world on notice that they are a good team. See who wins this game. Personally, I'm not a big fan of California, so I'm going to be or Lincoln Riley, so I'll be rooting for Notre Dame. Even though I'm not really a big Notre Dame fan either, but they're favored by 7 points. But this should be a very, very close and fun game to watch. Florida Atlantic versus South Florida. This should be a blowout in favor of South Florida. Missouri versus Auburn. Auburn, in terms of SEC teams they faced, this is probably the worst team they faced. Well, let me see real quick. Who's Auburn faced this year? They've lost to Oklahoma, A&M, and Georgia. They've lost to essentially 3 top 10 teams when you think about it. Out of those 3 teams, I would say that Missouri is the worst team of that batch. So this is going to be their best chance of getting a top 25 win. At home, I just don't see them doing it. They're favored by 2.5 points, though, but I just don't see them winning. Utah and BYU, a battle of some big-time Big 12 players. BYU trying to remain undefeated. This might be their first true test of the year. You know, they had that game against Arizona, but I think Utah is definitely way better than Arizona, so they got to play well. They're going to win this game. Cincinnati versus Oklahoma State, one of the worst teams in the entire nation. Cincinnati should blow this team out. So the Big 12 is looking very scary. The Big 12 might, I'd say the SEC and the Big 12 are definitely the two most competitive conferences in the country right now. The Big 10 is very top heavy. ACC also very top heavy. But it's a lot more fun football to have. Who will make the playoffs? Whose season will continue to burn down in ashes? Or we will find some risers like Nebraska or USC. And is Indiana for real? Can they carry it the whole season? We'll see. A&M, are they real? Ole Miss, are they real? Texas Tech. Texas, are they crawling back to victory? Do they win out the rest of the season? Pull the craziest story ever? Who knows? I'm excited to see what happens. As always, leave a like on the video, subscribe for more content. This is Z3 signing out.